Hey, what's up guys? So today I'm going to talk about how the Canon EOS R5 and the R6 stack up against each other and the original Canon EOS R. Let's do it. Hey, welcome back guys. So today I'm going to talk about how the Canon EOS R5 and the R6 stacks up against each other spec wise, and then I'm going to go through and compare it with the Canon EOS R as well, just to see if you're an original Canon EOS R user like myself, whether it's worth upgrading or not. So Canon has just dropped this news a couple of days ago. I'm a little bit late to the game compared to some of the other YouTubers, but I'm here to make this video to help you guys decide whether you guys should definitely get the Canon R5 or R6 or whether you should wait and see what happens. Let's dive in and take a look. Okay, so to start off with guys, I've gone to the Canon USA website. I've brought up the three cameras. I'm comparing them side by side with what Canon USA has on their website right now. So the cameras aren't actually released yet. You can pre-order them. So there's not a whole lot of information on the web about how, like, there is information on the web, right? But I haven't seen a lot of like actual images from real people, right? Apart from the ambassadors, I haven't seen like proper reviewers actually showcasing what the Canon cameras can do. So right now, all we can go by is the images and videos that the professionals, the Canon people, the Canon ambassadors have put out, but not average people like yourself and other professionals that aren't being paid by Canon. So I'm gonna go in, I'm gonna take a look at these specs with you guys right now, and let's do it. So I've just added in the Canon EOS RP just because it shows the full range of R cameras. So the full spectrum, right, from $1,000 all the way up to almost $4,000. So you can see the price difference across the board. I feel like each camera at their price point is pretty much where it should be. I feel like it's at a good spot. Like, I do feel like the RP is definitely worth $1,000. The R is definitely worth $1,800. The R6 and the R5, they're new cameras, so I can't really say they're worth it or not until we've actually used them. But just looking at the specs, I do feel like they're at a good price point for what the specs are. So the first thing is compatible lenses. They pretty much all say the same thing. They're compatible with all the RF lenses, excluding EF, EFS, and EFM, unless you're mounting it with an adapter. So if you do mount an adapter, you can use the full EF and EFS lenses. The only lenses that you can't use at this stage is the EFM lenses. And I don't actually see a reason why you would want to mount an EFM lens onto the R system right now. So it's pretty much the same thing across the board. So the first biggest difference you're going to see is in the megapixel count, right? The megapixels, it goes all the way from 20 up to 45. And the lowest megapixels right now is the Canon EOS R6. So one of the newest cameras they're coming out with has the lowest megapixels. The next one is the RP, then the EOS R at 30, and the R5 at 45. And with that said, having lower megapixels doesn't necessarily mean the image is going to be worse, right? They could have 20 megapixels can actually produce really amazing images. So you got to really consider like where you're using your photos, and if 20 megapixels is enough for you, the RP could be a really good option. But at $1,000, 27.1 megapixels with the RP, that's also a great option. And if you're a professional, if you need those high res images, if you need super detailed images, the R5 might be the camera to go for at 45 megapixels. The next biggest thing here is the ISO range, right? So the Canon EOS R and the RP starts at 100 and goes up to 40,000. The R5 goes up to 102,400, where the R6, cheaper Canon EOS R6, goes up to 204,800. This is something that we got to keep an eye on. It doesn't necessarily mean that just because they have a higher ISO range that the image is going to look better in low light. So once this camera comes out, keep an eye on low light performance. I feel like because it has this smaller, less megapixel sensor, it might actually produce images in low light that's a little bit cleaner than the more expensive Canon R5. So it's something to keep an eye out for. It may not be the case. They might be equally pixelated in low light. We'll just have to wait and see. Shutter speed is basically the same. It goes up to 1 to 1/8,000th. It goes up to 30 seconds in bulb. So it's really the same across the board, with the RP only going up to 1/4000th of a second. The next section on the website talks about focus points, right? So Canon has done something a little bit different here. They've started off with the R and the RP with focus points, but now they've kind of gone to focus zones. So there's no direct comparison here. You know, the RP comes in at 4800, the R comes in at 5655, and the newer cameras both have the same focus zones at 1053 for stills and 819 for movies. So the amount of focus zones for the R5 and R6 looks like it's identical, and there's no direct kind of comparison between those two new cameras and the two older cameras. Frames per second, this is kind of a little bit different here. Looking at these specs on paper, it looks like they've kind of just put in whatever. It looks like different people put in different information. The RP goes up to 5494. I mean, that's kind of crazy if it took that many photos per second. I believe that's video, you know, 60 frames per second. And they've kind of done the same thing with the R, put in 2997. That's probably like 4K mode, you know, it goes up to 4K 2997. But with the other two, they put in 20 frames per second. Built-in flash, the RP is not applicable. The RP is not applicable for flash. They all have AF during video, so that's a good thing. So one of the biggest difference here between the different cameras is the memory card slots, right? The original R and RP only has one SD card slot. The Canon EOS R6 has two SD card slots, and the Canon EOS R5 has a CF Express card and an SD card. So it's something that you gotta be wary about. It's something that you gotta keep an eye on, because if you are switching from the R or pretty much most other cameras to, unless you have other super professional cameras, if you're gonna go out and get an R5, you may need to go out and buy new memory cards, and the CF Express cards are kind of expensive, so you might want to budget that in. If you're doing video, you definitely want to get a few of them, especially if you're shooting at those higher specs like 8K or 4K 120. And talking about video specs, look what's next. So video recording, right? So this doesn't list the full specs. I'm gonna go through the full video specs in a different video for each camera, but just looking at the comparison on the Canon USA website. So looking at the R5, it's got 8K, 4K, and Full HD. The R6 only has 4K and Full HD, right? Ultra HD, Full HD. When you go down to the Canon R, it has 4K, but don't forget that's 4K crop. And then it's got 1080p and standard definition, and it's the same for the RP, right? So one of the biggest difference here, right? It looks like the newer cameras, the R5 and the R6, they've taken out HD, so they don't do 720 anymore. So that's something that maybe you gotta consider. I don't know a lot of people that still shoot 720, but if you do, it doesn't support that, but you can always shoot in HD and Full HD and downsides. And that if you do need 8K, you're gonna wanna go out and get the R5. The next kind of big difference is in the processors. So the R5 and the R6 has the DigiX, their newest processors, where the R and the RP has the the a little bit older Digi8s. LCD touchscreen, they're all pretty much almost identical, I'm gonna say. The R5 has a slightly bigger 3.2. The R has a 3.15. The R6, has a 3-inch, and so does the RP. They all have that little swivel screen that can come out and face you if you're a vlogger. So weight. The weight apparently on the RP is not applicable. It completely weighs nothing, so you don't have to worry about weight. Obviously, I'm kidding. Like I said, whoever put these in are probably different people putting in different information. Maybe it's late at night, I don't know, but the information here is a little bit inconsistent. But just looking at the weight, the R5 definitely weighs a little bit more, and I'm guessing that's just because it's probably got something in the camera that allows it to process those higher, 8K videos and higher image, 45 megapixel images, and definitely probably needs a little bit more weight just to house that CF Express card. The last bit on here is definitely the battery life, right? The Canon R5 and R6 have this new battery, and it's showing that it can take a little bit more shots with it, right? So the RP only takes 270, which is shocking. Don't forget, the RP is using a completely different battery to the other cameras, so it's a much smaller battery. So I'm not surprised by it, but I'm kind of disappointed by it. The EOS R has 560, the R6 has up to 590, but the clear winner here is the R5 at 700 shots. So with all that said, on paper, the R5 does clearly look like the better camera, right? It has all the specs across the range, is generally on par or better than the other cameras. So on paper, I feel like it's justified, right? The $38,900, the price is justified. I feel like it's worth it. And the R6 as well. The R6 looks like a pretty good camera. I need to see how the images look. They've dropped the megapixels down to 20 megapixels. I feel like that's enough for most cases, as long as the images look really crisp and clear. And it performs, and hopefully it performs better in low light. So that could actually be a pretty good winner, especially if you're a concert photographer, if you do a lot of weddings, like wedding receptions and stuff like that, or in churches where it's not always bright. The R6 might actually come out better. So that is it for now, guys. I am gonna do a couple more videos talking about the R5 and the R6, so stay tuned for those. This is just a quick comparison between all the specs on the Canon USA website. The cameras aren't released yet, so I haven't held them. I'm purely going off the specs off their website. I will dive into each body individually a little bit more in depth. Boom. That's it for now, guys. If you guys enjoy it, you guys know what to do. I'm going to be making some more videos shortly, so stay tuned. And anyway, I'll see you guys in the next one.